What's going on, Summoners? My name is Dan, and I'm happy to welcome you back to our channel. If you're not familiar with this series, we like to keep you guys informed on what's going on with the meta. Headed into the next patch, it's always good to have a heads up in regards to what's going to be strong, and in many cases, what's already strong and will continue dominating Summoner's Rift. We're going to be covering every role, so make sure to stay tuned. Before we start the video though, I want you guys to do me a favor and answer our question of the day. What champion do you think every League player should know how to play? My answer is Twisted Fate. Using the mini-map and gathering information is one of the most crucial parts of League's gameplay. I think this is something that all players should try to improve upon, and every player should invest some time to practice it. Let me know your answers in the comments down below. Alright, that said, let's jump into the video. Beginning with the top lane, let's run you guys through what is and what's going to be meta. One particular pick I want to talk to you guys about is Hecarim top. First and foremost, we don't think he's going to be the strongest top laner in the game, but he's going to prove himself as a prominent solo queue pick very soon. He's already finding a good amount of success as a top laner, but we expect him to only get stronger next patch with even more buffs to Summoner Ghost. Summoner Ghost was changed on patch 10.12. The ramp-up time was removed from it, meaning that champions that used it would be able to access its full power immediately. Champions like Darius were already running Summoner Ghost, but this buff definitely made the Summoner spell a stronger offensive and defensive option. Hecarim is also another top laner that uses Summoner Ghost because of his incredible extended trading as well as how effectively it works with his kit. He gains attack damage based on a percentage of his bonus movement speed, meaning that Summoner Ghost is basically a 2-for-1 deal on him. A lot of Hecarims like to double down on kill pressure by running Summoner Ghost as well as Summoner Ignite to maximize the amount of accessory damage they can bring with them onto a Summoner's Rift game. While Conqueror was nerfed on patch 10.13, Hecarim is definitely one of the champions that isn't affected severely by it. Hecarim loves extended fights, and he also has an extremely low cooldown on his Q. As a general trend, I do want to mention that more top laners will definitely begin running Ghost this patch. Be on the lookout because of how long the top lane is. While we might be used to Summoner Ignite providing that extra healing reduction and slight damage boost, Summoner Ghost is less commonly used. Instead, champions who already win longer trades will take this so that they can bait their opponents into pushing the wave into a dangerous spot and then trying to all-in them for a kill. Like we mentioned, Darius and Hecarim are already abusing this tactic, but they'll only grow stronger. Other bruisers can definitely use Summoner Ghost as well, as long as they're in winning matchups, of course. The last champion we want to mention is Quinn. She's the silent superstar of the top lane at the moment. If you look at which champions are the most popular in the top lane, it should come to nobody's surprise that Quinn is finding a ton of success. The top lane is flooded with juggernauts who lack mobility like Volibear, Darius, Garen, Mordekaiser, and Set. Ranged advantages allow players to kite these types of champions, and Quinn is especially safe compared to others. Her E allows her to create space between herself and her targets, so even if one of these juggernauts manages to get near, Quinn is still able to reset the scenario and continue kiting. Quinn's design naturally allows her to thrive in solo queue as well, since she's able to use her ultimate to quickly traverse the map and assist her teammates. Currently, Quinn is one of the strongest top laners in Platinum and higher. Quinn players are using Ignite and rushing Sanguine Blade for the immense amount of bonus stats it provides. It also synergizes rather well with her playstyle. Sanguine Blade's bonuses aren't mitigated by allies, only enemy champions. In other words, even if you're ganking for your mid laner, as long as the enemy mid laner is alone, you'll be able to get the full value out of the item. Alright, that's it for the top lane, so let's head into the jungle next. The first thing we want to talk about is Predator. If you've been keeping up with our channel, you know that Predator is also set to receive a buff next patch. I'm sure this definitely catches the attention of you jungle mains out there, and the buffs do look pretty promising. The damage is going up slightly, but more importantly, its cooldown is going down by 10 seconds. This means that in the early game, Predator will be on a 90-second cooldown. This is less than half of the cooldown of Summoner Ghost. Remember that the cooldown of the Summoner spell was actually increased to compensate the buffs it received. We expect more players to run it next patch, but mostly because of the damage buffs it's going to get rather than the cooldown. Don't take a 90-second cooldown for granted though. A minute and a half really isn't a long time. You can basically do a full clear of your jungle and have Predator up for a gank once you've finished. Next up for the jungle are tanks. It's time to celebrate if you're a tank jungler enthusiast because, you guessed it, Trundle is getting nerfed once again. If that wasn't enough, there are also Sejuani buffs lined up as well. For several patches now, Trundle has been the target of several nerfs. He's been a little too strong, performing well against not only tanks, but the general jungle champion pool as well. Riot is trying to tone him down a bit, but any nerf to him is an indirect buff to tanks. Also, remember that Conqueror was recently nerfed. Although certain champions aren't hit very hard by them, nerfs are still nerfs. All champions that use Conqueror are slightly weaker, and tank players shouldn't be shy. Especially in low elo, we see a bunch of tanks finding a great deal of success. Such champions include Amumu and Zac in particular because of their somewhat reliable crowd control. Once again, we want to mention Vi. We talked about her in our last episode, but wanted to follow up on her because she's been absolutely killing it in solo queue. Her win rates in low and mid elo are absolutely insane. She's one of the strongest champions to play in bronze and silver. Essentially, Vi plays like a tank. She provides crowd control and can gank pretty effectively. The only difference is that Vi deals a lot of damage. In spite of this, she's able to build a ton of cooldown reduction while sacrificing very little durability and damage. Trinity Force, Death's Dance, and the Warrior Enchantment provide an immense amount of power, and this 3-item spike is usually enough for Vi players to take over games. If you finish these items by the mid-game, you're actually going to have a 60-second cooldown on your ultimate. Every minute, you can press R on an opponent for easy lockdown, and in most cases, a free pick on a priority target. Alright, that covers what we got for the jungle, so let's head into the mid lane next. We also talked about Summoner Ghost in our last episode for mid laners, but this time is for real. Yes, more players did run Summoner Ghost this patch than before, but the increase wasn't very impressive. With another buff, we expect a second wave of players jumping on the Summoner Ghost hype train in the mid lane. While this may taper off toward the latter half of the patch, expect many of your opponents to run Summoner Ghost at the beginning of the patch. Players will be more willing to experiment with it, especially if you're in mid to high elo. Make sure you prepare yourself for this, especially against mid laners who have crowd control like Annie, Malzahar, or Twisted Fate. Summoner Ghost allows them to set up free ganks without having to expend Flash. In many cases, they can catch you overextended and force you to trade Flash for their Ghost, which absolutely won't be worth it for you. Come prepared with Summoner Cleanse in these situations, counter it with your own Summoner Ghost, or make sure your vision game is on point and that you're ready to concede some minions when you know the enemy jungler is nearby. In terms of picks, we do want to mention Spellbook Galio. Spellbook Galio isn't a build that's talked about very much, but it's an extremely powerful one. Putting the keystone aside for a second, Galio is actually one of the best mid laners in the game, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. In both high and low elo, Galio is finding a lot of success. He deals great damage, can protect his allies, and also provides plenty of crowd control. All of these strengths make him an optimal solo queue pick already, but Unsealed Spellbook seems very useful on him as well. This is the build that a lot of pro players are using in solo queue. The reason it works so well in Galio is that it basically provides ammunition for the Nimbus Cloak rune from the sorcery tree. Summoner Ghost also received a buff, so if Galio players want to use it, they'll now have an even stronger Summoner Ghost than before, as well as the burst of speed Nimbus Cloak provides. This makes it so much easier for Galio players to capitalize on overextended enemies' positioning. We'll keep this last bit short for the mid lane. Annie is in a similar boat as Galio. For very similar reasons, she's finding success in both high and low elo. Annie's burst damage and crowd control allow her to solo carry fights, especially when her opponents accidentally clump up for her combo. She's definitely going to feel like an excellent pick with those Summoner Ghost buffs. It's an especially strong spell on her, and I definitely suggest you guys give her a try. Alright, we've covered what we wanted to in the mid lane, so let's head over to the bottom lane next. So, for the bottom lane, let's discuss the meta a little bit. Arguably, some of the strongest picks currently include Ezreal and Varus. That's right, in spite of previous nerfs, Varus still seems pretty good in elite levels of play. High elo players still like him, but that's bound to change the next patch because of the nerfs about to hit him. Let's not forget, however, that Ezreal is also about to get hit with a pretty sizable nerf as well. Varus' damage is going down, while Ezreal's E cooldown is being increased. Both of these champions are having their strengths toned down, Ezreal's safety and Varus' high poke damage. By the way, if you guys don't know and are curious about the upcoming changes, I encourage you guys to check out the video we released last week. We covered all of them there, but you can always check out Patch Rundown instead, which we'll release very soon. Back to the topic though, what do these nerfs mean for you? Ultimately, Ezreal is going to feel weaker, but he'll still remain a pretty relevant pick. His damage isn't getting touched, and even with an increased cooldown on his E, landing Qs can gradually bring it down, and it still stands that he's one of the safest marksmen in the game. High elo players will still want to play him, but if you're in low to mid elo, you'll want to pick up some other picks. Picks like Caitlyn and Vayne are some of the safer picks in the late game for sure. Yes, we're definitely not going to say Vayne is a safe pick early because she definitely has some trouble early on because of her lack of wave clear. However, just like Ezreal, she and Caitlyn can both reposition during fights and also have a little bit of self-peel ready. If you're a Varus player, it's probably time to drop him and pick someone else up. Jhin and Ashe have similar playstyles and aren't getting touched. Varus is already failing to find success in low to mid elo, but this next nerf he's set to receive should seal the deal. With all the nerfs that have been hitting marksmen over the past few patches, our analysts believe that a new wave of ADCs will emerge as the top tier picks. Namely, these are Vayne, Jhin, and Ashe. Ashe's long range and utility make her a similar pick to Varus, and since he's weaker, she'll once again reclaim the throne as the stronger lockdown marksman. Jhin falls into this category as well, but a lot of his value is placed on his strong laning phase. He's a strong laner because of his fourth shot, Q, and long range with his spells. Like Ashe and Varus, he's also got a decent amount of crowd control built into his kit, meaning that he can also start fights for his team. Unfortunately, there weren't many bottom lane changes planned next patch, so that's actually going to wrap up the bottom lane as well. Finally, let's conclude with supports. Alright, starting off the support section, let's keep you guys updated on the champion meta. Okay, so what happened with Yuumi? As you guys likely know, Yuumi was gutted this patch, and moving forward, it's looking like she'll still be a pretty weak one. Ironically, Yuumi's absence has actually opened up the meta for more enchanters. Yuumi would outscale most other ones, and thus players were often pressured into picking aggressive supports to try and punish a Yuumi lock-in. Picking a passive lane and farming was basically an automatic loss. The most popular support champion right now is Thresh, but the ones following him actually show us a pretty interesting trend. Speaking from data we pulled from Elite Brackets, we actually have some surprising news for you guys. We typically expect high elo supports to want to carry their games with aggressive playmaking supports. However, players in Masters and higher are actually placing equal value on both archetypes, enchanters and CC-oriented supports. Lulu and Karma are some of the most contested support picks in higher elo games. Of course, Senna is also extremely popular, but she's an outlier as she breaks the typical conventions of the support role. Rather than valuing 1v9 aggressive supports, what players are finding the most success on are the most flexible support champions. In other words, the ones that can provide value and fit into pretty much any team composition. Of course, this includes Thresh because of his immense utility, as well as the various ways he can utilize it. Other champions include Lulu, Karma, Senna, Bard, and Janna. These champions provide so much value to basically every team. They provide a good mix of crowd control and defensive steroids. They work well as both aggressive picks as well as scaling champions who seek to protect their teammates later into games. If anything, the meta actually feels like it favors enchanters a little bit more than tank supports, so this might take some adjusting from some of you support players out there. That's going to cover our 10.14 meta update for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and also subscribe so you can stay updated with all the different kinds of content that we're releasing. Thanks for watching, everyone. We here at ProGuides really appreciate it. Until next time, good luck on the Rift, and happy grinding.